Hello everyone, I want to quickly show us how to perfectly cut an off-shoulder blouse. First thing you have to put in mind, you have to determine the length of your blouse. If it's going to be the long blouse, as a normal blouse, that would be shoulder to your hip line. Okay, it could be 24, it could be 25 or 26 inches, depends on the person you're sewing for. But if you want it like a peplon, or maybe you want to attach it to a trouser for a jumpsuit, that means you cut it to your half length region, and that's just what I've done here. Okay, as you can see, this is my starting point. I measured my shoulder and I came down by 1 inch. And from this point, my shoulder slope point, I connected it to that and I took my armhole. Okay, then from my shoulder I also measured shoulder to bust line. This is my bust line. I also measured shoulder to underbust, that's my UB line. Then I also measured shoulder to my waistline. Okay, so whatever the shoulder to waistline is, you just mark it and draw a straight line, either 16, 15, 17, whatever. So now, having done that, I also went further and took my nipple to nipple point. Whatever the nipple to nipple point is, you just divide it by 2. And that's it. Add your half inch to it. So now this is the nipple to nipple point, and I drew a straight line down. Then I came down to the waistline region and I took a dart of half inch and I connected it to 1 inch below my bust point. The reason I did this is to avoid or eliminate pointiness towards the bust region. As we progress into this tutorial, I would show us the essence of this 1 inch below the bust point. Though you can make yours half inch, it all depends on, but I love mine at 1 inch so as to eliminate pointiness. Okay, so I haven't done this way. That's my basic bodice this way. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I want to quickly contour the underbust. So looking at this pattern, it's obvious I need to contour the underbust region to give me a perfect fit. So from the underbust, all I need to do is to get my tape measure, and from that point I'm just gonna measure 3/4 of an inch to the right. I'll pick up my pen and mark it 3/4 of an inch to the right side. Then from the left here, I'll take another 3/4 of an inch, but let me mark the 3/4 of an inch on the right. Then I'll simply do the same thing on the left. So having done that, next thing I'm going to do is to take my ruler and connect it like so. I'm going to connect it like so. And to this part, I'll do the same thing here. So I haven't drawn it that way. Next thing is I'll just connect it to this point like so. Then I'll do the same thing here. The importance of this contouring is that after sewing, it will pack your underbust region perfectly well. So now that I'm done contouring the underbust, so next thing to do is it's time to take my horizontal measurement. Okay, so I'm going to take my waist measurement, but please note, whatever measurement you are taking, always make sure you add back your darts. Like how I've always said it times without number, whenever you take any darts, make sure you replace the darts by adding it, factor it into the measurements. Okay, so for the waistline, I'm going to measure this is half inch, that's 1 inch. So I'm to add 1 inch to the waist measurement. because I took a dart here. But please note, in case you are measuring directly on your fabric, you know this is pattern. If you are measuring directly on your fabrics, it means that you are going to factor in the side seam allowance, the allowance for joining. Because you are cutting directly on your fabric, you will need allowance here to join the two darts together, because we'll be cutting out these darts. Okay, because you need allowance, so you need half inch here, half inch here. So you are going to add the half inch to the 1 inch that you have taken on the waistline. So that will automatically means 2 inches. So you add 2 inches to your original waistline measurement. But because this is pattern, which means that I'm going to add the half inch for joining on the fabric, and that is when I am transferring to fabric. You understand? When I'm transferring it to my fabric, I will need to place the pattern on the fabric and include this dart allowance for joining. Okay, so I'm going to factor in only the darts, and not, I'm talking about the inner dart too. I'm not talking about any other darts you are taking. Okay, so I'm talking about the inner darts. So now for this one, I will measure the waist and the darts together. So the waist and the darts together to get here. So I'll come to the underbust. When you look at the underbust, you notice that I did more of tightening here, as in contouring. There's more of contouring at the underbust region. Okay, so I'm going to measure the darts I have taken here quickly. So this is exactly 2 inches, both, as in on this part and on this part. Okay, 2 inches, which includes the normal darts I had taken earlier and the extra that I used to contour it. So that 2 inches, I'm going to factor it into my underbust measurement, and let me see where. Okay, here, and I'll mark it. Then I'll come to my bust line. As you can see, I started my dart 1 inch below the bust line, so there won't really be any, there's no darts here. Okay, there won't be any darts here, but please note, I'm still going to slash a line. I'm still going to slash here. If you are measuring directly on your fabric, that means you add joining allowance even if there is no dart, because you join this part. Okay, you add joining allowance, but because this is pattern, so you just factor in your bust darts, your measurements only. Okay, so there won't be any need for it. So the same thing you have taken here, you also take it here too. So having done that, I'm going to connect all these lines together. Also connect that to this. So that completes my basic bodice. Okay, now that I'm done with this, now that I'm done with the main body, now it's time to go to the main thing, the main reason we are here, and that's how to get the off shoulder perfectly well. How to get the off shoulder. But before I do that, let me take my allowance. That's the side seam allowance, even though this is pattern. So I'm taking allowance of 1.5. So now it's time to determine the off shoulder stuff. So first thing to do is, from this your shoulder slow points, measure whatever you have between here to here. You know the standard measurement for shoulder slow point for adults is 3 inches, which I measured from here to here, right? So from here now, you now measure from this point to this point. Whatever answer you get, you divide it by 2. Okay, so you measure from this point to this point. So whatever answer you get, you divide it by 2. Just fold your tape measure like this. So this is the midpoint. So you come here now and measure the midpoint from your shoulder here. Just measure the midpoint where it gets to, so you mark it. So now next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect. The reason let me explain this. The reason you have to get the midpoint is because normally when it comes to shoulder darts, shoulder princess darts, some people make mistake and just measure this straight. If you measure it straight, you get something like this. Can you see? If you measure this straight, you know, from here to here is 4 inches. That's nipple to nipple point, right? I measured my nipple to nipple point here. If you decide to make that mistake and measure it straight like this, by the time you are done sewing your shoulder dart, you notice. That's why sometimes when you see some people's shoulder darts, it will be pointing towards, as in it will be pointing towards this point. You understand? Pointing towards this point, which is not supposed to be so. You understand? The dart is supposed to go, there's supposed to be a slight curve. It's to go outwardly like this, not necessarily inside the neckline. Okay, it's to go outward. There should be a curve here. It should go towards this part, not come towards this part. So I'll just connect it now to this point like so, just a straight line. Can you see the direction? Can you see the shape? Pointing, like, as in it will come like this, not this way. Okay, so don't make that mistake and go and measure it straight. So let me just place my ruler here and see what straight will give us. Can you see the difference? This is what straight will give us. So don't make that mistake. So having done it this way, next thing to do is to determine how high or low you want your off shoulder to be. For some people, they take their off shoulder maybe from 2 inches, just from this point they just come down. Some don't actually. Some, it all depends on what your client wants. So you have to ask your client the type of off shoulder the person wants, if the person wants it to be low or to be high. Okay, so it all depends. You could take 2 inches for people who don't like it to be low, maybe 2.5 or maybe 1/3 inch. So it all depends on what the person wants. But ideally, I prefer it when it's low, but not too low to the extent of exposing the cleavage. Okay, so what do? I just come here, measure my armhole. So whatever the armhole is, get the midpoint of your armhole. So whatever the armhole is, get the midpoint of the armhole. Okay, so from that point, I'm just going to take a straight, place it like so. Please note, once you get the midpoint of your armhole, make sure you come to this part too and you measure whatever you get from this point. You know, I slanted this part by 1 inch. I came down by 1 inch. So just place your tape rule like this and measure where it got to. Okay, because it will definitely give you something accurate this way than when you intend to measure it like this. If you measure half of your armhole like this, if you measured half of the armhole like this and you decide to take this measurement and come here and measure it, you won't get it. It won't be straight. It won't be straight. Okay, but if you measure it from the top here, so wherever it gets to, that's 4.5, then you come here to measure 4.5. So that's how you'll be able to get it accurately well. So it's straight like this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this point like this. I'll also mark these points. There's a reason for it. Now these two marked points, so you can either draw your straight line to meet with this point as your front off shoulder. But because I want this one to be a little bit stylish, so I'm going to determine the stylish neckline I'm going to attach, I'm going to use for this. So because of that, I want a sweetheart neckline, which is mostly used for off shoulder. Okay, so all I need to do is just to come down by 2 inches. I'll just come down by 2 inches like so. You could make it 1.5. It all depends on how low you want the front to be. Okay, it all depends on how low you want the front to be, or how your client wants it. So once I click on it, once I mark it down like so, or you could make it 3/4 of an inch if you don't want your cleavage to show that much. Okay, but once it comes to off shoulder, you don't make it too low and you don't make it too high. When it's too high, it won't look too nice. Well, but it's still okay. It all depends on what the person wants actually. So next thing I will do is I'll just connect from this point, connect it to this point. So this automatically gives me my perfect sweetheart neckline. Okay, sweetheart neckline for my off shoulder. So now, as it is now, I still have about 2 more things to do to this pattern and I am done. Okay, 2 more things. And I want to say something. These 2 things I still need to do to this pattern, they are the most important part of this drafting. The first one is I have to, normally when it comes to anything off shoulder, tube, corsets, alternate, anything off shoulder, tube, whatever, you have to contour the upper part. You have to contour the upper part. This is to give you fitness around the upper bust region, because when we look at this very well, your bust, you get the distance between here, your bust point, and your under bust to get your bust radius. So for this person, a bust radius is 3.5. So if I take this 3.5, transfer it up here, that is to tell me that our bust will be around this region. Okay, so if the bust at the upper part will get around this region, that means I need to contour this part so that the fabric will rest perfectly well on our bust. And how do I contour this part? Is very simple and very direct. All I need to do is just come to this part and measure 1/2 inch to the right, measure 1/2 inch to the right and 1/2 inch to the left. So after measuring 1/2 inch, all I need to do, I'm going to connect a straight line to meet with this bust point like this. Can you see? Then from this point, I'll also connect this point to meet with the bust point like so. Can you see? So having done this, next thing I'm going to do is that, and that will be the last thing to do to this pattern. Please note, just like I said earlier on, whatever dart you take, you have to return it back. Because I have contoured this part, it means that by the time I take in these darts like so, because I'm going to cut through this place is no longer needed, I'm going to cut this dart and I'm going to take it in. So by the time I take this dart in, it automatically means that my across front measurements, I talked about across front measurements when in our other class. I will show us how to take the measurement of across front. Just place your tape rule from the midpoint of your armhole. You measure from one midpoint to the other. That's how to get your across front measurement. And whatever you get, you divide the answer by 2, okay, and add ½ inch. So you use it to take your across front measurement. Now note, because I've taken this dart here, it's going to affect the across front measurement. That means it will make this part to be tight, okay, which automatically means it's going to expose part of the bust. This bust region here is going to expose it. So in order for it not to expose it, what do I do? As a professional seamstress, all you need to do is just come to this part and add the same dart you have taken here. You are going to add it here, and you know I took ½ inch, so I'm going to add 1 inch. Please note, if you are cutting directly on your fabric, that means you are going to factor in another extra ½ inch for joining here and another ½ inch for joining here. You are going to factor it into the dart intake measurements, okay? So instead of measuring 1 inch, it will now be 2 inches. So you now add extra 2 inches here, okay? But because this is pattern, I prefer cutting it on pattern. But because this is pattern, so by the time you want to transfer to your fabric, after cutting out this dart, when you place your pattern on your fabric, you leave space here ½ inch. Okay, so because you leave space here, no need to factor that half inch into this measurement. So what am I trying to say? All I need to do is just to take only these darts. So I'll take 1 inch from here. I'll just take 1 inch, and my 1 inch gets there. So what do? I need to extend this part. So what this means is that this becomes my new armhole. So I am no longer interested in this. So this is no longer the armhole. Okay, so this is the new armhole. By so doing, there won't be the bust region here will not be exposed. So imagine after tightening this place, after contouring this place, you now still use this as your armhole. That automatically means that the off shoulder would show. It will show part of the bust. And do not forget, you are still going to take part of this part to join the sleeve. So it means it will just affect how these parts will be on the person's body. So having done this, all I need to do, I am done with my off shoulder. So all I need to do is just to cut it out. So I'll start by eliminating this region first, because I do not need this at all. So I'll just start cutting. So let me just open it up before I remove the darts. Can you see how lovely it looks? Can you see? But I need to remove the darts. So all I need to do is just come here, take off the darts. So having removed the darts, this is what I have for my off shoulder. Can you see? So this is what I have for my off shoulder, perfectly cut out. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to show us how to cut the back. So let me cut the back. As for the back, it's very simple and straightforward. As you can see, I've already drafted my basic bodice for the back. If you don't know how apply this sway back. You can refer to any of my previous videos because I've done a comprehensive tutorial on how to do the back this way. Now to quickly do the same thing, just the same thing I did there, I'll just come here to get the midpoint. Mark the midpoint. That's how deep you want the off shoulder to be. Measure it from the top to know. You come here to, you mark the same thing here just to get accurate measurement. Now having measured it here, next thing I'll do is, normally you can connect it straight because this is the back, okay? And for the back there is no need for contouring the same way I contoured the front, okay? There is no need for contouring, but I'm not going to leave mine like this because I prefer the back to be a little bit stylish, okay? So all I need to do is just come down by 1 inch because this is the back. Just measure 1 inch, come down by 1 inch like so. In case you didn't see that, let me use my red marker so you can see it well. Okay, so come down by 1 inch and simply take your curve like this and give it a slight curve. Okay, give it a slight curve like so. The curve shouldn't be much, just a little bit stylish, okay? You can, whatever you want to do to this bag depends on you. You can even come down more, okay? You can come down more just to have a very deep back, but it all depends on what your client wants. Some people don't like their bra showing at the back, okay? So just give it like this and you just draw your line. So this automatically becomes my back, the back neckline, okay? So what do I do? Don't forget this part is still my zip. So what do I do? Next thing is to cut the back. So we talk about the sleeve, the off shoulder sleeve. So I'll just cut it. So I'll just cut through the armhole. I want to quickly chip in something. If you want the line at the back dart, you want to cut it through, just cut slash through and add your seam allowance for joining, okay? That's all for it. The next thing is the sway back. You just trim off any excess there so that there won't be puckering at the back, as you can see. So just trim it off, that's all. So yeah, it's better that way. So this automatically goes for the back. So when you want to sew in your zip, you go with the zip, okay? You sew according to the zip. So this is for the back and this is for the front. So this is for the front and this is for the back. So that's all for the pattern drafting of the off-shoulder blouse. So in the next tutorial I'm gonna show us how to perfectly and accurately cut the sleeve, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to miss that, so stay tuned.